Hey there guys, it's finally time for this video all about rhyme. My name is Katie and I've got tips. Ah! Hey there guys, my name is Dr. Katie Ailes and I am part of the team here at I Am Loud Productions. Welcome to Form Fundamentals. This is our mini-series leading you through the basics of poetic form. This episode is all about rhyme. Why we use it, the various types of rhyme in poetry, and how to write poetry with rhyme yourself. Form Fundamentals is kicking off season 2 of our Return to Form series, which celebrates poetic form and shows how contemporary writers can use it in new and interesting ways. Big thanks to National Lottery funding through Creative Scotland for making this project possible. You can watch all of the videos in the Return to Form project through the playlist linked up in the eye. Today, I'll begin this episode by defining rhyme and explaining why poets often choose to use it in their work. Next, I'll go over the core ingredients of rhyme: consonants and assonants. From there, we'll explore the categories of rhyme, from perfect rhyme to half rhyme to multisyllabic rhyme. Then we'll review the two kinds of rhyme placement: end rhyme and internal rhyme. To wrap up, I'll give you some helpful tips for writing in rhyme so that you can apply all of this information to your own poetry. I know that sounds like a lot, but the great thing about rhyme is that you recognize it when you hear it. So this is just putting terms to effects that you're probably familiar with already. Plus, I'll be giving you tons of examples through today's video. So without any further ado, let's get to it. First things first, what is rhyme? I like the way that Encyclopedia Britannica puts it: the correspondence of two or more words with similar sounding final syllables placed so as to echo one another. There's a couple of parts to that, so let's break it down. First of all, rhyme is all about sound. It does not matter how the words are spelled on the page. All that matters is that the final syllable or syllables sound similar. For instance, the words through and rough are spelled the same, but they don't rhyme because they sound different. Whereas the words through and who are spelled differently, but because they sound the same, they rhyme. Secondly, I want to emphasize the word similar in that definition. Rhymes don't always sound exactly the same: cat, bat, moose, goose, etc. You can also have cat, bought, and moose, mooed. Those are called half rhymes, and we'll be getting to them shortly. Third, this definition talks about rhyming words being placed so that they echo one another. I think that that's a beautiful way of putting it, and a really helpful reminder that for rhyme to be effective in a poem, the rhyming words have to be relatively close together. For example, if you have the word river in line 1 of your poem and the word shiver in line 67 of your poem, the reader or listener has had a zillion words in between, so they're not going to remember the first word. Those words won't echo, so they don't really count as a rhyming pair. Okay, we'll dive further into the technical aspects of rhyme in a moment, but first of all, why do we rhyme? Why has this been such a core component of poetry across cultures for millennia? I'd like you to think back to the nursery rhymes you were sung as a child. For instance, Jack and Jill went up the hill, or Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a big fall. You can probably recite a lot of them by heart, even now. There's something so intuitive about the correspondence of sound that happens in rhyme, something that we can understand and appreciate from a very early age. Rhyme works in poetry because it is so universal and so central to sound and to language. And simply put, it sounds good. It's very pleasing to the ear. Poetry that doesn't rhyme is, of course, fine, and in fact, that's the vogue today in printed poetry. But there's something so powerful and harmonious about poetry that relies upon sound, upon the echoes of sound to create its meaning. Finally, and particularly for performance poets, rhyming is an excellent tool for aiding memorization. Rhymes create links across a poem so that when you say the first word in a rhyming pair, you're more likely to remember the second word in that pair, thus helping you to flow through the poem as you're performing it aloud. It's actually theorized that ancient oral poems like the Odyssey used rhyme in part to help the poets performing them to remember these hours-long epic poems. So if you're interested in performing your poetry, I would highly suggest weaving in rhyme, as it very much helps on stage. Okay, now that you know what rhyme is and how to use it, it's time to dive into the details. We'll start simple here and look at the two core ingredients of rhyme: consonants and assonants. As we know, there are two categories of letters. You have your vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, and the rest of them are consonants. The same is true for sounds. You have vowel sounds built from vowels and consonant sounds built from consonants. Broadly speaking, these are the two ingredients of words. And yes, there are some nuances here, but we're keeping it simple. Linguists, please do not come attack me with pitchforks. A great technique in writing, and the first step on your way to rhyme, is to group together these vowel sounds and/or these consonant sounds for a pleasing effect. When you group together multiple words with the same consonant sound, that's called consonants. Nice easy one to remember. Let's see how this works in our example poem, Callum O'Dwyer's The Kiss. Here, I've highlighted places where the poem has repeated the same consonant sounds close together. The first line uses consonants by repeating the F sound: first, off, final. You'll see that the repetition of the sound can occur anywhere in the word. It doesn't have to be at the beginning or the end. And again, note that this has to do with sound, not spelling. So in line 4, even though loss is spelled with S's and circle is spelled with a C, they both make the S sound, so that's an example of consonants. So the repetition of consonant sounds in proximity is known as consonants. What about the repetition of vowel sounds? That is assonance. Let's see it in action on Callum's poem. Oh boy, that is a lot, and you could probably find even more assonants if you kept looking. One of the reasons I love this poem is because it is so wonderfully rich in assonants as well as consonants. From the very first line, it uses repeating vowel sounds to really knit the piece together and make it sound cohesive. In that first line, you have promised, this, and kiss. All of them have that I sound, eh. Again, spelling doesn't really matter here, just sound. A single vowel can make multiple vowel sounds. For example, in line 5, you have yet, when, met, and we. They're both spelled with E, but they make different sounds, or E. Assonance just refers to the repetition of the sounds, not of the vowel itself in how the word is spelled. Assonance and consonants are fantastic tools in poetry, and particularly for poetry that you're planning on performing aloud. They work great on their own, but as I mentioned, they're also the building blocks of rhyme. So now let's look at how to construct rhymes and at the multiple types of rhymes. Let's begin with the type of rhyme you're going to be most familiar with: perfect rhyme. Simple example to start: cat, bat. Here, the vowel sound is the same in both words. Cat and bat both have a in it, so these words have assonance. The ending consonant sound is the same as well. Cat and bat both end with the t sound, so these words have consonants. The only difference is at the start of the word: k for cat and b for bat. Because cat and bat have assonance and consonants at the end of the syllable, this forms a perfect rhyme. Nice and simple so far. However, because poets love bending the rules, there are also multiple other kinds of rhyme which, while not perfect rhyme, still create a weaker rhyming effect by using similar sounding syllables. The most common are half rhymes, also known as partial, slant, imperfect, or near rhymes. There are several different ways of creating half rhymes. I'll show you through examples. Let's take our perfect rhyme example, cat, bat, and tweak it a little to make it cat, bad. Here, again, there is assonance because cat and bad share the vowel sound a. However, the words end with different consonant sounds. You have cat and bad. Because those end consonant sounds are different, this cannot be a perfect rhyme. It's a half rhyme. This works the other way as well with consonants. So let's tweak the original example and make it cat, bought. Here, the end consonant sound is the same, t, but the vowel sounds are different. Cat, bought, ah. Now, you may be yelling right now, cheat! Cheaters! That's not perfect rhyme, in the bin! That's fair, and you absolutely do not have to use half rhyme if it grates your ears the wrong way. But do know that there is a long tradition of poets using half rhyme in their work. Shakespeare heckin' loved them, and it's a great way of expanding your possibilities if you're finding it difficult to find a perfect rhyming pair. Okay, moving on to another category of rhyme. Cat, bat ain't all that's out there. You can also add in multiple syllables to make multisyllabic rhyme, also known as compound rhyme. Sure, you can rhyme sleep, creep, but you can also rhyme sleepy, creepy, and sleepiness, creepiness. And to take it to the next level, you can even combine these kinds of rhyme. Let me show you how to use half rhyme in multisyllabic rhymes. For example, sleepiness is a perfect rhyme with creepiness, but it's a half rhyme with floppiness. Again here, the consonant sound is the same, p in sleep and flop, but the vowel sound is different. Sleep, flop, ah. So that is an example of a multisyllabic consonant half rhyme. Say that 5 times fast. Okay, we're gonna dive into the technical weeds here for just a moment, but bear with me. Something to be aware of with multisyllabic rhyming words is that whether they're perfect rhymes or half rhymes depends on where the stress falls in the word. We're going to review how to identify stresses in words in our next episode of Form Fundamentals on meter, but basically it's where you place emphasis when you say a word. Essentially, for a set of multisyllabic words to be perfect rhymes, the stressed syllables of those words need to rhyme with each other. Take the words today and away. In both, you stress the second syllable. Today, away. We would say the sentence, I'm going away today, rather than the sentence, I'm going away today. That would just sound weird. Because the stressed syllables of these words, way and day, rhyme, this is a perfect multisyllabic rhyme. But let's switch it up and let's take the pair today and birthday. In today, the stress again is on the second syllable, day, but in birthday, the stress is on the first syllable, birthday. You would say, today is my birthday, rather than today is my birthday, unless you're very cool. So the stressed syllables are actually day from today and birth from birthday. And of course, day and birth don't rhyme. So even though this set of words ends with the same syllable, day, because the stressed syllables don't rhyme, this is not a perfect multisyllabic rhyme. Technically, we would call this a multisyllabic half rhyme. I get that that is all pretty confusing, and to be honest, it took me a while to understand as well. If you're feeling a bit lost, do not worry about all of that jargon, honestly. Rhyming is ultimately all about the echoes of sounds, perfect and imperfect, and as you're writing, your ear will pick up on what sounds good and what works in your poetry. You want to rhyme today and birthday? Freaking go for it. As I keep saying in these videos, there are no poetry police. It is all groovy. And as a quick note here, what words rhyme also depend on the poet's accent. Some words rhyme in some accents and not others. For example, basil rhymes perfectly with nasal in my American accent, but for my Scottish pals, basil rhymes perfectly with dazzle. It's not about who's right, basil. It's about celebrating our linguistic diversity, basil. Whew. That was a lot of types of rhyme in poetry and a lot of rules and exceptions to rules. We're going to move on now and consider where rhymes can occur in poetry. Happily, this is pretty simple as there are only 2 kinds of rhyme placement in poetry: end rhyme and internal rhyme. First, end rhyme. When we talk about rhyming poetry, we almost always are talking about end rhyme. It means that the words at the ends of a set of lines rhyme with each other. Jack and Jill went up the hill. Line 1 ends with Jill, line 2 ends with Hill, Jill and Hill rhyme. Voila! End rhyme! For a more sophisticated example, let's check out the end rhyme in our example poem, Callum O'Dwyer's The Kiss. This is a Shakespearean sonnet, so it follows a set rhyme scheme. It requires end rhymes in a certain pattern. When you're trying to figure out the rhyme scheme of a poem, the easiest way is to go down the end words of the lines and give each new rhyme a new letter. So here, the first end word is kiss, so we mark that with an A. The next end word is land. That doesn't rhyme with kiss, so it's a new rhyme. We'll mark it B. The end word of line 3 is this. Aha! It rhymes with kiss, so we mark it A. Line 4 ends with sand, which rhymes with land, so that's B again. Then for line 5, we have found, which doesn't rhyme with our A rhyme or our B rhyme, so we mark that as C, and so on and so forth. When you've marked up the whole poem in that way, you can read out the rhyme scheme like this: A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. That is the rhyme scheme used by all Shakespearean sonnets. As I said, end rhyme is usually what we're talking about when we discuss poetic rhyme, and it's often the easiest to recognize. It's very easy to see the rhyming words at the end of lines, or hear them at the end of lines. But the ends of lines are not the only places that you can whack a rhyme in a poem. You can put rhyming words anywhere in a line or a stanza. We call rhymes that don't take place solely at the ends of lines internal rhymes because they take place internally within the poem rather than just at the ends of the lines. Let me show you on Callum's sonnet. I've found 2 examples of internal rhyme in this poem. The first 2 are at the end of line 2, land, and the start of line 3, and. But Katie, you may be saying, land is an end word. Yup, but and isn't. So because part of the pair is not an end word, this counts as internal rhyme. Line 13 gives us another example. The words kiss and miss are both inside the line. So as you can see, internal rhyme can be across lines or limited to a single line. The point here is that rhyme is not limited to line endings. You can play with it anywhere in your poem. I love internal rhyme. It's probably the poetic technique that I use the most when I'm composing my own work. As I noted earlier, rhyming really helps with memorization, and so I like to use internal rhyme to link stanzas together, so that when I end a stanza, I already have a reminder of what I'm going to do in the next stanza. It helps me to remember it, and it also helps to sonically link the poem together across the stanzas. And in highly structured poems with rigid rhyme schemes like sonnets, using internal rhyme is a great way of distracting from the rigidity of the set rhyme scheme and helping the poem to flow more naturally, emphasizing that it's not just certain words that have to chime, that have to echo throughout the poem, but that sort of chiming, that sort of harmony happens throughout the breadth of the poem. A final note on this, I've talked about internal rhymes which are freely placed somewhat randomly over the course of a poem, but internal rhyme can also be structured in the same way as end rhyme in some poetic forms. A great example of this is in Edgar Allan Poe's classic poem The Raven, which as part of its unusual rhyme scheme uses a fair amount of internal rhyme. In this first stanza, you can see how there are 2 instances of the A rhyme in line 1, dreary and weary, and how the C rhyme, rapping, tapping, etc., occurs mostly in the middle of lines. Poe mixes up the rhyme scheme throughout this zany poem, but this is an example of relatively consistent strategic placement of internal rhyme. Okie doke, you may also be hallucinating ravens at this point. That was a lot of information and terminology. We're going to round off this episode with some light guidance on how to actually use all of this stuff in your own writing. First off, if you're writing poetry in rhyme, you may be tempted to immediately open the rhyming dictionary, and I would urge a little bit of caution there. Don't get me wrong, I love rhyming dictionaries. They are very, very helpful resources when you're writing poetry, but I would urge you not to go to them first when you're starting to compose a poem. For one, they usually only offer you perfect rhymes, and as we've seen, there is a whole glorious world of half rhymes out there to explore as well. For another reason, because rhyming dictionaries suggest all of the words that rhyme with whatever word you've searched with, they'll probably tempt you to use some words in your poem which do rhyme but might sound a little bit unnatural. Just because cheese rhymes with Peloponnese does not mean that that's going to be a good fit in your poem. If you're stuck for a rhyme, try sounding it out, playing with a couple of different options, then consult the dictionary for some support, but try it out on your own noggin and in your own mouth first. For my next tip, as I'm writing poetry with a fixed rhyme scheme, I like to generate word banks. And these are lists of words that rhyme that I can refer to as I'm composing my poem. This is particularly helpful for those poetic forms which require you to use the same rhyming sound many, many times. For instance, in a villanelle, you need to come up with 7 rhyming words for the A rhyme and 6 rhyming words for the B rhyme. When you kick off writing a poem like that, it is really, really helpful just to make a list of all of the potential rhymes that you can use so that you can have that on your desk as you're composing the poem. Finally, again, when I'm writing in fixed rhyme schemes that require rhymes to occur in certain places, I find it really helpful to write out what I call a rhyme map. This is simply a guide, a key to where all of the rhyming words in your new poem are going to go. For example, here's how I would draw out a rhyme map for a Shakespearean sonnet. Doing this on a piece of paper or on your computer gives you a handy guide to follow as you're composing your work. You can just write out the key, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, etc., and then you can fill in the rhyming words as you go. My final advice for writing in rhyme: enjoy it, sound it out, and do not be too strict with yourself. Rhyming is all about leaning into the joy of sound and playing with how words harmonize with each other, how they echo each other, chime together. Whether it's end or internal, perfect or half, single syllable or multisyllabic, basal or basil, have fun with it. You got this. And that's it for this 3rd episode of Form Fundamentals. I really, really hope that this was helpful for you guys in understanding how rhyme works in poetry. As always, if you have any questions after watching this video, please pop them in the comments below. I am more than happy to help. And don't miss our final episode of Form Fundamentals coming out shortly. It focuses on meter, which is often considered the trickiest aspect of poetic form, but do not worry, I break it all down for you with plenty of examples and kittens. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that bell icon so that you don't miss any of the other upcoming videos we post. You can also directly support our work and receive so many amazing perks by signing up to our Patreon for as little as £1 per month. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing!